Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
Throughout history, there have always been whispers, murmurs that defy the grand narratives taught in schools, that challenge the tidy timelines of textbooks and unravel the threads of what many accept as historical truth. One of the most enduring of these whispers echoes from the lips of a forgotten people, scattered across continents, cloaked in mystery, and steeped in an identity both ancient and denied, the Black Israelites. Their story, one that spans millennia and oceans, has often been overshadowed by the dominant historical narratives of conquest, empire, and colonialism. Yet behind the veil of time lies a complex and compelling history, an intersection of ancient Semitic tradition, African civilizations, forced displacement, and an enduring struggle for spiritual and cultural reclamation. In the bustling streets of Harlem during the early 20th century, in the dusty villages of West Africa, and within the traditions of Caribbean and Latin American communities, people of African descent began to speak of something largely forgotten. They claimed a lineage that linked them not just to African heritage, but to the Israelites of the Bible, those who once walked the deserts of Canaan, endured slavery in Egypt, and formed the kingdom of David and Solomon. To many, these were bold assertions, dismissed as fringe or pseudo-historical. But to those who embraced this identity, it was not merely a belief, but a rekindling of memory, a memory that colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade had tried to erase. The origins of the Black Israelite identity are rooted in both ancient history and the violent ruptures of the African diaspora. The ancient Israelites, as described in the Hebrew Bible, were a Semitic people who emerged in the Levant around the late 2nd millennium BCE. While mainstream historical scholarship has often placed them firmly within the Middle Eastern context, archaeological and anthropological studies have revealed strong ties between the ancient Near East and northeastern Africa. The lands of Kush, modern-day Sudan, Mizraim, Egypt, and Punt, the Horn of Africa, all share mythological and genealogical linkages with the Israelite narrative. In particular, biblical references to Ethiopian Cushite figures, such as Zipporah, the wife of Moses, and the Queen of Sheba who visited Solomon, suggest a long-standing cultural and religious interaction between Israelites and African peoples. One of the most notable early Black communities with an Israelite identity is the Beta Israel of Ethiopia. Their origins are contested. Some argue they descend from the union of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, while others suggest a migration of Jewish communities into Ethiopia during the Babylonian exile or even earlier. Regardless of origin, the Beta Israel maintained Jewish practices, including observing the Sabbath, dietary laws, and Torah traditions, for centuries in relative isolation. European Jews and scholars initially dismissed their legitimacy until modern DNA evidence and historical reevaluation confirmed their ancient roots. In the late 20th century, Israel formally recognized the Beta Israel as Jews, facilitating their immigration through operations like Moses and Solomon. The question then arises, could there have been other Israelite-descended communities across Africa whose histories were erased or distorted through colonization and slavery? The answer lies partially in the ethnographic and linguistic traces scattered across West and Central Africa. Several tribes, including the Yoruba, Igbo, and Lemba, have claimed Israelite ancestry based on oral traditions, ritual similarities, and ancient customs. The Lemba people of Southern Africa, for example, practice circumcision, avoid pork, and observe ritual purity laws similar to those in Leviticus. In recent decades, genetic testing has shown that some Lemba males carry the Cohen modal haplotype, a Y chromosome pattern also found among Jewish priest Kohanim, providing compelling biological evidence of a shared heritage. Among the Igbo of southeastern Nigeria, the story is even more fascinating. Igbo oral traditions have long identified them as the people of Eri, linking them to one of the sons of Gad, a tribe of Israel. Igbo religious customs, such as the reverence for the Ark, purification rituals, and symbolic practices resembling Passover, have led scholars and observers to speculate about their Israelite roots. During the transatlantic slave trade, many Igbo and other West African groups were among those captured and sold into slavery in the Americas. Thus, the echoes of an Israelite past traveled across the Atlantic, hidden in the minds and customs of the enslaved. In the Americas, the story took on new life under the pressure of enslavement, displacement, and forced Christianization. Stripped of their languages and cultural touchstones, African-descended peoples began to reconstruct their identity through spiritual revelation and a reinterpretation of Scripture. The Hebrew Bible, especially the Exodus story of Moses leading the Israelites out of Egyptian bondage, resonated deeply with enslaved Africans. Spirituals like Go Down Moses weren't just songs. They were codes, histories, and affirmations of a collective past. It was within this crucible of suffering and spiritual longing that the modern Black Israelite movements emerged. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, figures like Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew in New York City, William Saunders Crowdy in Kansas, and later leaders such as Ben Ami Ben Israel in Chicago and Dimona, Israel, began to organize communities around the belief that Black people, particularly those descended from slaves, were the true children of Israel. These leaders argued that the loss of identity experienced through slavery and colonization was prophesied in the Bible, and that redemption would come through returning to the laws of Moses and reclaiming a Hebrew identity. The movement was never monolithic. Some groups embraced Rabbinic Judaism, others rejected it in favor of what they viewed as a purer biblical faith. Some focused on cultural revival, others on political and spiritual separation from mainstream American society. One of the most enduring communities is the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem, founded by Ben Ami, who led his followers from the United States to Liberia in the 1960s and later to Israel. Though initially met with skepticism and legal challenges, the community has persisted for decades and contributed to Israeli society while maintaining its unique Afrocentric Hebrew traditions. Despite their rich history and resilience, Black Israelites have often been misrepresented in media and scholarship. Some fringe groups with extreme views have attracted attention, overshadowing the broader movement's historical and spiritual depth. As a result, many still view the Black Israelite identity with skepticism or misunderstanding. But beyond the noise lies a real, complex, and deeply rooted identity, one forged at the intersection of African heritage, biblical tradition, and diasporic trauma. The legacy of the Black Israelites is not just about who they claim to be, but what they represent. They embody a deeper question about history, identity, and the power of memory. They force us to ask who gets to define truth, whose histories are preserved, and whose are buried. In a world still grappling with the legacy of slavery, colonialism, and racial hierarchy, their story offers a powerful lens through which to re-examine the past and imagine a different future, one where forgotten histories are recovered and displaced peoples reclaim their names. As the movement continues to grow and evolve in the 21st century, scholars, spiritual seekers, and truth-tellers alike are beginning to take a second look. The journey of the Black Israelites in the African diaspora is not merely a historical footnote. It is a testimony of survival, faith, and the eternal search for home. In their story, we find a mirror reflecting the complexity of human identity and the timeless quest for belonging.